Hey, thanks for joining me. So recently I got the bug to get a new pocket knife, and I wanted a particular style. I wanted a Barlow. I love Barlow knives, and I wanted it in carbon steel instead of stainless steel. And as I looked at what was available new, between the configurations that were available and the price, just wasn't finding anything that really tripped my trigger. So I decided to look on the used market and see what I could find, and I found one that I really like. I think it's going to serve me really well, and it turned out well. So I want to talk about that my 5 tips on how to choose a good used knife. Whether you're doing this online or in person, this will give you some ideas of things to look at and questions to ask. So when you make a choice, you know you're going to get something that turns out to be what you want. So if you would, before we get started, please click the like and subscribe buttons, and let's get started. Okay, let's get started. 5 tips on how to buy a good used knife. The first thing that you want to do when you're looking for a used knife is decide on a style and brand of knife that you want. I wanted a Barlow, I wanted 2 blades, I wanted carbon steel, I wanted US made. Those were my main criteria. And being a little bit familiar with knives, I knew that this brand, Western Cutlery, was a good brand, had good quality products, good quality steel, and they make great knives, and I knew that it would be a good choice. So that's the first step. Decide on what it is you want, so you're not just out looking at all kinds of knives, and you can just look forever doing that. So decide what it is you want. Tip number 2, look at the overall condition. Does the knife look like it's been abused? Does it look like it's in decent shape? Does the description tell you much about it? This one had, like I said, some green on the bolsters, which told me they were nickel silver. There was some light rust on the blade, but like I say, only this one spot had enough rust to create some pitting. And the scales looked a little dry, but overall the knife looked like it had been used little but stored badly. So it looked like it would clean up. The description online said that the blades moved freely, had good walk and talk, and so I thought this knife looked like one that would be salvageable without a whole lot of effort. So overall condition, that's the next step, step 2. Step number 3, look at the blade condition. Last thing you want to do is get a knife that's got a really gnarly blade on it. And so if you get something that is in really bad shape, you can end up with a knife like this, where the blade's all nicked up, or sometimes you'll see them where they look like they've been put on a grinder and most of the blades have been just worn away. So blade condition is a real important thing. When I looked at this knife, I can tell right away that it had the original blade profiles were still intact. They hadn't been ground down, hadn't been sharpened on an old carbureted stone, a million times. The blade profiles were just like they were when they left the factory. Again, so it didn't look like it had been used much. The blades weren't overly rusty, and they certainly weren't beat up and chipped up. So blade condition is next. The next thing is joints. So on a pocket knife like this, you want to see if the joints are okay. Are they, this one is solid. There's no wiggle to it at all. If the joints are wobbly, then that's going to be a problem. And you can see this old Schrade pocket knife. I actually had this knife when I was about 10 years old, and I used it for a long time. And if you look, I'm going to hold the body still. Look what the blade does. It's just loose as can be. And the problem then is that if you have a knife with a loose joint, it's going to be a problem to fix it up without a lot of effort. So, that's the next thing. If it's an online auction and you can't actually feel it, ask questions. If they don't say anything about it, then try to ask some questions about it. Because if you get one with a wobbly joint, then it's going to be a problem. If they have a good return policy, you could send it back. But I would definitely send them a question and say, hey, are the blades wobbly? Are they tight? Get an answer from them. If they won't answer your questions, maybe they're not someone good to buy from. So make sure the joints are in good shape. Make sure the back springs look like they're in good order. Nothing's bent or damaged or broken. And inside of the knife looks okay, like it's, if there's some light rust or whatever corrosion, it might clean up. But if it's really full of gunk and goo and nasty stuff, then that could be a problem. So again, it's a little easier if you can get your hands on it. But I bought this one online, and just from the pictures that they had, I was able to ascertain most of these things. So joint condition is real important. Try to get one that's nice and snug, no wobble. And if you can find out good walk and talk, the blade should open and close and have good good movement on them. You don't want one that's not operating properly. You know, if you get one like this and the blade is just like really stiff and it doesn't close, that's not going to be good. So, you know, a lot of the sellers may not know what walk and talk means, so you might have to educate them, but find out if the blade operates like it's supposed to. The last thing, tip number 5, is price. Now, I was able to get this for like $17 plus shipping. It was a fantastic deal. I knew that Western Cutlery was a great company that would have you know, good quality steel, made good quality knives, and so I could trust that. You know, I recently bought this electrician's knife, and I bought this at an antique flea market, and it's a Camillus made in the late 70s, early 80s. These things are just built like a tank, and really heavy blades, and this one has basically has some patina but no rust on it at all. Even inside it's clean, and I got it. The guy originally asked for 14 and then lowered his price to 12 without me even asking, which was nice of him. So I paid $12 for that knife. And if, you know, that wouldn't be a bad everyday carry pocket knife. These things are just bulletproof. So you can get some really good deals out there, but decide what your budget is and try to stay in that. There are some brands like Western, like Camillus, where you can get some really good knives without breaking the bank. You can also, if it's your desire to buy a case or something that's, you know, more expensive, then certainly there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're just looking for a good using pocket knife, there are some brands that you can get that'll serve you well and just won't be too terribly expensive. So decide on a budget, try to stay within that budget, and you might have to do a little bit of looking, but ultimately I was able to find a knife that answered all my needs, from style, number of blades, steel type, USA made, and the price I wanted to pay. And it was out there. I just had to look a little bit. And once I found it, it definitely worth the look. So there you go, 5 tips, just real quick. Style and brand of knife, decide what you want. Number 2, overall condition. Number 3, blade condition. Number 4, joint condition. Number 5, the price. So look at those things, and I think when you buy a knife, you'll be able to make a good choice, get something good and solid. Hey, well, there you have it. Those are my tips on how to buy a good used pocket knife. This little Western Cutlery Barlow that I got, I think is going to serve me really well. It's beautifully made. It's in good enough condition that I think it'll serve me for a long time. So I'm really happy to have it, and the price was right. So I hope these tips were helpful to you. If you have any thoughts or questions, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. And as always, thanks for watching.